Promising new treatment for
Australians had a quite different view. The small group of protesters demanding Miss People back home. At least one Aboriginal leader says he'll boycott the handover of the soon-to-be-released reconciliation document because of Mr Howard's stand.
We'll have some differences about the usage of language concerning past events. We all know that.
Mr Howard is also under fire from opposition leader Kim Beazley, who's attacked the Prime Minister for failing to visit Indonesia since the Interfed operation moved into East Timor.
He does do a number of overseas trips. There for a call here on the way.
Criticism Mr Howard dismissed.
Suffice it to say that in the past I've never been reluctant to visit Indonesia, and I won't be in the future.
But now, he says, is not the time.
My understanding from the Indonesians is that it's still the intention of President Wahid to visit Australia.
With enough on his domestic plate, as he prepared to leave Israel, Mr Howard refused to buy in to Palestinian concerns expressed by Yasser Arafat that the Israeli expansion of settlements surrounding Jerusalem is undermining the peace process here.
Now, I'm not going to express a view on that. I come here as somebody who wants the process to work, not as a foreigner giving gratuitous advice to either side.
After his hectic trip through 3 countries, the Prime Minister now flies back to Australia, where he'll be just as busy as the government prepares for next week's budget. In Bethlehem, Flo Bitcon for Nightline.
A second night is passing after the shooting of 3 police officers in Brisbane, and still no sign of the suspected gunman, despite an intensive and wide-ranging manhunt. 2 of the wounded officers remain in serious condition. Police believe that the wanted man, who has a criminal history, is still armed and carrying a large amount of ammunition.
Another call out tonight, officers racing to an area near where yesterday's shooting took place after reports of several gunshots and a man in a backyard. Several houses were evacuated, but investigators were unable to find any further leads. It added to a day of frustration for police, hunting 32-year-old Nigel Parodi. People walked their dogs where the day before a hail of bullets was unleashed on 3 officers sitting in a patrol car. Sergeant Chris Mulhall remains in a satisfactory condition. Constables Darryl Green and Charnel Cole, who was hit 8 times, are in intensive care. They're all from the same station, where some colleagues have had to be counselled.
We've all gone through various highs and lows emotionally. We're very fortunate that we have a peer support program in place here.
Security has also been stepped up until Parodi is found.
No threats here, no. But one has to be careful.
Their fears are well grounded. A search of Parodi's home uncovered ammunition, army gear and balaclavas. There was also a note outlining funeral plans.
I think anyone who calls himself Jesse James is somebody who clearly has an obsession with guns and with a sort of an outlaw mentality.
Reported sightings have sparked alerts across Brisbane. Police say Parodi was banned from holding a firearm licence because of his criminal history, which includes assault, drug and stealing offences. Parodi also has a history of living off the land, the suburban manhunt turning to aerial checks on creeks and parkland.
Neil Dawley for Nightline.
Melbourne's Legionnaires' crisis has deepened. With 2 dead and another 45 confirmed infections, it's now the largest outbreak of the disease in Australia. The city's aquarium has suffered a dramatic slump in attendances since it was blamed for the epidemic, and today tried to shift the responsibility elsewhere.
The Melbourne Aquarium has become a place to avoid at the moment, even for usually loyal coach tours unwilling to take the risk. To counter the problem, the aquarium yesterday hired 2 experts who, after an overnight inspection, declared the area safe.
It hasn't been confirmed at all that the cooling towers here are the source of the epidemic.
Certainly from the internal investigations that we've done, we've not seen any evidence that would directly point to a cause in this establishment.
But unknown to them, just down the road, they were being contradicted in high places.
However, the fact that so many of the people have been associated with the aquarium makes it pretty clear that that's the source of the Legionella.
They were even contradicting each other.
So it's not an epidemic, it's an incident.
To compound the problem came from elsewhere,
it may well be from outside.
They were inadvertently conceding the area may still be unsafe.
I'd say rather than a whitewash, it's quite a responsible thing to do. I mean, somebody needs to take an action as to
find if there is a problem here, and that's exactly what we're attempting to do.
You really can fall into problems if you jump to conclusions without being scientifically based.
The law firm initiating a class action over this crisis says it already has more than 30 of the victims involved in legal action set to be lodged early next week. Charles Slade for Nightline.
Muddy waters for Australian swimmers going into Olympic selection trials in less than a fortnight, despite an international court ruling that competitors are free to use the controversial full-length bodysuits. The Australian Olympic Committee says each swimmer is now on their own if they're sued by a rival.
We think that there is a real risk now for the swimmers.
Words Australian swimmers didn't expect or want to hear today. It was hoped the Court of Arbitration for Sport would give them confidence about the legality of the neck-to-ankle swimsuits for next week's Olympic trials. Instead, it ruled it did not have the jurisdiction or authority to inquire into the validity of the bodysuits.
How do we respond to that? Well, we've done all we can do.
FINA, the world swimming body, says the court's ruling is a victory. Full-body suits are and will be allowed in competition, and results achieved therewith will be and remain valid, even if contested. Australian swimming is just as assured.
The matter should be put to bed, laid to rest, and that our swimmers and coaches should be able to get on without any distraction.
But John Coates remains unconvinced. He's written to Australian swimming, warning of protests and appeals, and will delay team selection until those threats have been lifted. Our swimmers just want it settled.
I mean, I don't care if I have to get up and swim nude at the Olympic trials. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
And Grant Hackett's coach is equally blunt.
It's really bloody annoying at this stage because, you know, the confusion still abounds.
But to make sure it doesn't get sued by any angry swimmers, the Australian Olympic Committee is asking every member of the team to sign a release protecting it from any liability and reinforcing that the athletes were well warned about the controversial swimsuits. Michael Usher for Nightline.
Queensland's Sunshine and Gold Coasts have been given another pounding. Big seas stripped sand from some of Australia's most famous beaches, threatening homes in some areas. Noosa has been hard hit. The main beach has disintegrated, trees toppling into the sea, and there's been serious erosion at Maroochydore. It was the same on the Gold Coast, although board riders were making the most of the chunky surf, with world champion Mark Occhilupo leading the way in the 3 to 4 metre swells. After the break, surprising new findings about where and how Australians live. And Russell Crowe, will he be bigger than Ben-Hur?
My name is Gladiator.
Remarkably agile Lexus GS300. Use it as you see fit.
Tell your granny you miss her.
Tell Shane Warne he's your hero.
Tell your parents it's a baby girl.
Tell the world.
Tell them you won the business.
Tell someone you're sorry.
Tell her you're coming over. Tell a whole group of people.
Tell your friends overseas.
And hopefully you'll tell them about us.
Because we believe everyone should be talking. Tell your friends about OneTel.
Another MLC investment working towards your wealth. Before the value of an Australian company increased significantly thanks to a scientific breakthrough, MLC was there. Through 15 independent investment managers, here and around the world, MLC could magnify your wealth with this sort of opportunity. MLC, working towards your wealth.
Life is the toughest marathon of all. If you don't feel 100%, maybe it's because your diet's not right. Centrum Multivitamin and Mineral Supplement can help with its 23 essential vitamins and minerals. It's used by the Australian Institute of Sport. Centrum, complete from A to zinc.
At David Jones, even for Mother's Day gifts, we promise to never knowingly be undersold. It's just part of the service.
And there's no other store like
David Jones.
On a current affair, one man's war on banks.
One person can make a difference.
He refuses to have an account.
I'm just old-fashioned. I like cash.
Now his boss won't pay him.
People shouldn't be forced to have bank accounts.
Tomorrow, 6:30.
Victorian Premier Steve Bracks has loosened the purse strings in his government's first budget, dipping into the big surplus left by Jeff Kennett's administration. Released on the internet, the budget soaks up more than $420 million of the $1.3 billion Kennett surplus. Key initiatives are tax cuts for business, as well as increased spending on hospitals, more beds, better outpatient services and more nurses. Education is boosted by 350 more teachers and 10 new schools in remote regions, and there'll be funding for 800 more police. Topping it off, $1 billion infrastructure reserve to fund major projects. Any chance of preventing Thursday's planned 24-hour strike by New South Wales teachers hinges on talks tomorrow. Union leaders will consider an appeal from the Industrial Relations Commission to call off the stoppage over a pay dispute and head back into arbitration. Australians have known for a long time that our traditional image is vastly different to the truth. Most don't live in the outback, we don't work the land. But our urban reality is changing as well. And new figures show that it too is far from what we may think it is.
Time for a bit of navel gazing. Who are we? Where are we going? Well, according to Bernard Salt, who crunches the numbers on these sorts of things, we're going to Sydney. Sorry, Melbourne. It seems people really have said, wacko, the Olympics are on, and headed to the big smoke. A record 60,000 rolled in last year, some chasing construction jobs for the Games. Others found work repairing hail damage after the big storm. Some more came from overseas. Where we're not going is the bush. The air out that way thick with dust as people rush off to greener pastures.
The typical communities are in outback New South Wales, the Wimmera in Victoria, the Wheatbelt in Western Australia. These are the places that Australians are leaving in quite significant numbers.
Within most of the capitals, there's more change afoot. For 40 years, we've spread ourselves all over the landscapes, our cities sprawling to slake our thirst for a quarter-acre block in the burbs. Now, though, there's an almighty push back into town.
Australians have changed direction to embrace the inner city. It started in Sydney, it has moved to Melbourne and in fact is spreading throughout the country. It's part of a value shift by Australians.
Nationally last year, 15,000 people shifted to the inner city. That's a record. So was the year before and the year before that. And Bernard Salt reckons that will continue for another decade.
There is more diversity and range of choice in residential living in urban Australia now than there was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Of course, as we flock to the inner city, it's only natural things should start to get pretty crowded. Sydney's King's Cross is Australia's most densely populated suburb, with more than 12,000 people living within just 1/3 of a square kilometre. And things are also changing within our homes, wherever they are. The traditional household of mum, dad and the kids is on the way out. Separations and ageing seeing them decline at a rate of 14,000 a year.
And in fact, it is singles and couples which is the fastest growing household type in Australia. And it's poor old mum, dad and the kids that are very much on the back foot.
And last but not least, a new piece of jargon. First, we had the baby boomers and then the Generation X's. And for a while, we've wondered who comes next. Well, now we know. It's Generation.com.
Generation.com was born between 1976 and 1991. It is this group that is at the forefront of internet usage.
Mark Barlin for Nightline.
Fresh honours today for the man who led the peacekeeping mission in East Timor. Major General Peter Cosgrove was appointed the new chief of the Australian Army and will take up the post in July. The General described the promotion as a great honour and a great challenge. Philippine troops have fought a savage gun battle with Islamic rebels, holding 21 foreign hostages on an island in the south of the country. One government soldier has been killed, 4 others wounded. The condition of the hostages not yet known, nor is it clear whether the rebels suffered casualties. The hostages were snatched from a Malaysian holiday island last week. The rebels say 2 of their captives will be beheaded unless the soldiers withdraw. Meanwhile, on the main southern island of Mindanao, government troops have launched a major assault on another rebel stronghold, claiming to have killed at least 35 guerrillas. After being on the back foot in yesterday's riots in central London, British police are on the back foot again, accused of being too soft as anti-capitalist activists defaced historic memorials. But senior officers said they were forced to ignore many offences, fearing any action would only inflame the violence.
The police say yesterday's operation was a success, but this morning they've had to contend with accusations of not doing enough, adopting a softly approach resulting in criminal damage. At first, officers didn't react when they were bombarded with any object that came to hand. And they didn't intervene when the cenotaph and Winston Churchill statue were vandalised. For a full 20 minutes, demonstrators were allowed to run riot, attacking McDonald's restaurant and other properties.
We wanted this to be a peaceful demonstration, and we fought to make sure this was a peaceful demonstration. Unfortunately, there were a hardcore of demonstrators, and in fact, I think it's wrong to call them demonstrators. These were just mindless thugs that were intent on violence.
Was there any reason why officers just looked on as protesters went on the rampage for 20 minutes and destroyed shops and property?
If you're talking about the incident in McDonald's, some of our officers came under attack. They were wearing normal uniform in the same way that I was walking around Parliament Square. They came under a very vicious attack, and some of those officers were injured. It then took some time to withdraw those officers and get officers in protective equipment back into that situation.
Last June, anti-capitalist protesters caused £2 million worth of damage during the worst riot since the poll tax protests. Then the police were deeply criticised, and they were accused of provoking the crowd with heavy-handed tactics. In contrast, yesterday's operation began as one of restraint, but the strategy was forced to change after the violence flared.
A video filmed by a passenger has revealed the drama of the cruise liner left stranded in the Solomon Islands after hitting a coral reef on the weekend. The captain ran the Seattle-based ship aground to stop it sinking completely. There was an orderly evacuation of all 99 people on board. The passengers were then taken to Brisbane via Honiara, many without their luggage. Shareholders in US toy giant Mattel are taking legal action over the huge severance payout to its sacked chief executive. Jill Barad received nearly $50 million, despite the company's share price slumping from $45 to just $10 during her 3 years at the helm. But even that pales when compared to the former boss at Compaq. His farewell payment, $420 million, after he oversaw shares in the computer company slide 50%. In Hollywood tonight, the world premiere of Gladiator, which movie critics predict will elevate Russell Crowe into the front rank of box office stars. It's Hollywood's first Roman epic in almost 40 years, and the first time the Australian actor has had top billing in an American film.
Posing with the rest of the cast at tonight's world premiere, Russell Crowe says Gladiator is the film of which he's most proud.
Getting to play this kind of character and walking out of the Coliseum with 5,000 extras is going, Maximus, Maximus. I mean, it's theatre on a grand scale.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
The Aussie plays a Roman general who becomes a gladiator to destroy the emperor who betrayed him.
Action!
Russell claims he cracked every bone, ruptured every muscle making the film, but had a blast.
Scalpel. I've done quite a few good operations today. We've severed a head.
And to add to the drama of one Coliseum fight scene, the Aussie had to dodge tigers.
Action!
He admits now it was pretty daunting. At the time, he made light of it.
That over there is what we call here in Malta a tabby cat.
My name is Gladiator.
critics tip it'll be a blockbuster. Russell says costing $150 million, it'll need to be.
You can't make movies of this scale in terms of the budget, you know, without there being some kind of commercial return, or you won't be making this kind of movie very often.
It's also his first Hollywood movie where he gets top billing.
A bit of pressure come with that?
No, but a private jet does.
Gotta love that, haven't you?
Gotta love that, folks.
After recovering from this post-premiere party tonight, Russell will fly home on that studio jet to promote the film in Australia for just one day before returning to a film set in South America. In Los Angeles, Nick McCallum for Nightline.
A record price was paid tonight for a painting by Australian artist Arthur Boyd. The work, Dreaming Bridegroom 1, is part of the Bride series that was first shown in 1958.
$65,000. All done. Thank you very much.
With commission, the total price was $954,000, easily surpassing the $400,000 paid for Boyd's Abraham and the Angel. The buyer was art dealer Stuart Purvis, whose father had originally sold the painting in 1958 for 125 guineas. In a moment, rugby league star Anthony Mundine returns home to an uncertain future. Cricket chiefs meet to discuss the match-fixing scandal, and Alan Donald hits a boundary but pays the price.
8 o'clock Wednesday on Good Medicine.
Now women can improve their sex life. But is Viagra the answer? Plus, discover how smart your child is. And bigger breasts without implants.
Good Medicine, 8 o'clock Wednesday on 9.
Remarkably agile Lexus GS300. Use it as you see fit.
The power of the net now on your mobile.
Another MLC investment working towards your wealth. When a lift manufacturer from Switzerland doubled its profits in a tough environment, MLC was there. Through 15 independent investment managers here and around the world, MLC could elevate your wealth with this sort of opportunity. MLC, working towards your wealth.
Cheers! For over 3 decades, Tom Jones has been the master of cool.
You don't have to be rich.
Now, Tom Jones in a second show.
If I only knew.
Performing the hits that have made him one of the superstars of our time.
It's not unusual. Think I better dance now. Burning down the house.
Tom Jones live. Due to overwhelming demand, a second and final show. Tickets on sale Friday.
Now to sport, and in an attempt to win back its integrity, cricket's governing body is holding a summit at Lord's to discuss bribery and match fixing. It's under pressure to come up with penalties for players caught taking money from bookmakers.
The most powerful men in the world of cricket arriving at Lord's to discuss the game's gravest crisis. The International Cricket Council faces the huge task of not only determining the truth about claims of match fixing, but working out what to do about it.
Purely and simply in an Australian context, we are committed to do whatever we can do to assist in cleansing the sport of the rot that's going on.
The meeting was forced by the Hansie Cronje affair. The South African skipper forced to step down after admitting he took money to forecast matches.
I find myself in an awful predicament brought about by my own foolishness and naivety.
Strong leadership to work out a strategy
you know, to eradicate once and for all this cancer from our game.
The 18 men from the ICC's executive board will also debate whether to offer amnesty to any player that comes forward with information about bribery. That has the support of the ICC's chief executive, Dave Richards, but not others.
I'm certainly not in favour of amnesty. I don't see how they can be granted. I don't see where I've got the power or anyone would give me the power to grant amnesty to someone who committed a criminal offence in a respective country.
The talks are expected to continue for 2 days. Raymond Dale for Nightline.
The future of rugby league wanderer Anthony Mundine may be known as early as tomorrow. Mundine arrived back in Australia today after his highly publicised overseas sojourn, but now he has to explain his actions and future plans to officials at St George Illawarra.
If Mundine left Australia to find some space, he certainly lost it as soon as he arrived home.
Hey, just calm down. Just let us take the photo. Just stop.
Stop! The airport scenes left many shaking their heads in disbelief. But rugby league's most controversial figure was unfazed by the attention.
Oh, I'm always relaxed.
With his career hanging in the balance, Mundine wasn't about to provide any scoops as to his future plans.
What about boxing? Have you all done yet? We'll see what happens.
His minder's job over, the centre of attention sped off with Muhammad Ali's life story as company. Most left wondering what the next chapter of Mundine's future will hold. Late this afternoon, he was issued with a letter asking him to front the club's board. The meeting is expected sometime tomorrow. Meanwhile, an early setback for New South Wales in their state of origin preparations, with fullback Robbie Ross ruled out at today's medical due to a knee injury. The Melbourne custodian has been replaced by Cronulla's David Peachey.
Long way from Dubbo to where I am now, and to the people I've played with and against, it's certainly an honour. So I know I'm not just playing for myself, I know I'm playing for the whole community.
Whitewater rafting replaced horse riding on day one of the Blues preparations, and while some were still unable to stay in the saddle, there were no injuries like the ones that cost Robbie Kearns and Bradley Clyde Origin jerseys last year.
Yeah, it was a really good idea, and this year it was a lot more successful than obviously last year with no injuries, and it was a good fun thing to do.
Wally Lewis for Nightline.
In AFL, West Coast's Fraser Garrick will appear before the tribunal tomorrow night to face one of the code's most serious charges. Garrick has been booked for making negligent contact with an umpire. Club officials met with Garrick tonight to try to determine how they'll defend the allegation. South African cricketer Alan Donald has given new meaning to the term hitting a boundary. Donald suffered a suspected broken rib after crashing into a fence during an English National League game at Southampton. Fielding for Warwickshire, Donald was scrambling to catch Shane Warne, who's playing for Hampshire. The South African paceman had earlier taken 3 for 9 and was named man of the match. And still to come on Nightline, the finance and the national weather.
Mothers and daughters unite.
As we do our bit to bridge the generation gap.
But the battle of the
I'm
wills
going to dob on you. I'm going to get your mum.
could all end in tears.
That was over $300 worth.
Changing Rooms, 8:30 Wednesday on 9.
This is Claire. In 1 year, financial disaster will strike her family. In 3 years, her family will break up. In 6 years, she'll be on the streets. But with your help now, St Vincent de Paul could make the difference. Please give generously today. For credit card donations, call 13 18 12. 13 18 12.
Go on, jump in!
You tell your friends, you tell your friends.
You tell your friends, you tell your friends. Hold up, boy.
You tell your friends, you tell your friends. You tell your friends, you tell your friends.
High above the city street.
You tell your friends.
Look at that!
You tell your friends.
It doesn't work!
You tell your friends about one day.
The next generation in digital mobile networks is coming.
Where is it? Come on, let me out, let me out, let me out, let me out! Come on, let's go! What are you doing? Come on!
You tell your friends about one day.
The next generation in digital mobile networks is coming. The next generation is OneTel.
You tell your friends
Life is the toughest marathon of all. If you don't feel 100%, maybe it's because your diet's not right. Centrum multivitamin and mineral supplement can help with its 23 essential vitamins and minerals. It's used by the Australian Institute of Sport. Centrum, complete from A to zinc.
Hurry into Harvey Norman and buy furniture and bedding with no deposit and no interest for 24 months and no repayments for 12 months. Lounge and dining furniture, bedding and bedroom suites. No deposit with no interest for 24 months and no repayments for 12 months.
Now to finance news, and the Australian share market closed higher today, led by the banks and resource stocks Rio Tinto and BHP. The All Ords up 27 points. In Tokyo, the Nikkei was up 36 points. In London tonight, the FT100 is almost 60 points up in morning trading. Gold is fetching $275.45 US an ounce. And in European trading tonight, the Australian dollar is buying 58.62 US cents, 64.3 euro cents, 63.7 yen, 37.5p. The national weather and cloud persists over much of the southeast. The onshore airflow fed by a high in the Tasman. A low is affecting the northeast, while a cold front is moving through the Bight ahead of another high. The forecast: fine for Darwin, showers in Brisbane, increasing showers for Sydney, rain developing in Canberra, but fine for Melbourne, Hobart and Adelaide, and in Perth it should be a fine day there as well. That's the news this Tuesday night from all of us here at Nightline. Good night.